Hey guys, welcome to the Next Generation podcast, a space run by young people for young people, where we talk about stuff that actually matters to us, whether it's things we deal with every day or big issues shaping our world. Just a quick heads up, some of the things we will talk about today might be a bit sensitive or triggering. If anything makes you feel upset or worried, please don't keep it to yourself. Talk to a trusted adult. Thank you so much for being here and let's get started. This is Next Generation Podcast.
Hi, this is Kempston Youth Club and we're interviewing G. G, can you tell us a bit about your life?
Hi, I'm G. I am a former police officer. I had a BAFTA-winning film made about me because apparently I have an interesting story, which I hope that you're going to explore. My claim to fame, of the many I have, is I was the UK's first openly gay black police officer. Made a film about my life, which won a BAFTA. I'm currently writing my book, my life story, and I will leave the rest for you to dig and find out.
Okay, regarding your early life, you mentioned being fostered, and I was wondering, do you think that took away some cultural experiences, some key cultural experiences that you see more like in black communities nowadays, considering your foster parents were white?
It's yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no, yes, in terms of I didn't grow up in a black environment. I grew up in a little village in Kent where everybody around me was white. So I grew up with I call it a white mentality, for want of a better phrase. So I didn't have those cultural experiences. But what I did have from I was lucky with my foster parents, right? They were very loving. So there was a lot of love and a lot of hugs in the house. So that was great. But there were jokes made about me being black or whatever and stuff like that. But there was a lot of love in that house, which when I came to my parents' house years later, didn't quite work out.
So do you feel like when moving around that you felt like you didn't belong in a certain area or a certain place, or like you felt like, oh, this person has this experience, and start comparing yourself to other people around you because they had different experiences?
Yeah, in fact, that's a very powerful word used there, belonging, because a lot of my story is about finding the place where I belong, and I never really felt I belonged anywhere, because whatever space I was in, I always felt like I was the odd one out for some reason or the other. So that created a lot of problems for me, because I was always trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be, because to try and fit in, I became like a chameleon, trying to fit into different spaces. But it's taken me almost 50 years to figure out that for me, belonging is where I'm at. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was school, considering still in this modern age, I would say lots of my friends of colour still experience racism, and I can only imagine that it had more validity, there was more to it. Back then there was more of it, there was a higher volume.
I mean, you didn't have the support that you have around racism nowadays, which is a lot more the legal aspects, the conversations around it and stuff like that. Then it was just kind of, I grew up in a time when it was just accepted. But there was a difference between when my parents came. My parents' generation came over and they were new here. So they put up with a lot because they felt they were visitors. This is not our country yet. But my generation, when we came, we were born, and then we sort of like came to that point, but actually, we're not putting up, we were born here. This is our home. So that's why you had in the 70s, you had a lot of the Notting Hill riots, the race riots, Toxtons, Brixton riots, etc. like that. And that was our generation saying, no, you will not treat us like this. I missed the 80s because I wasn't in the country in the 80s, but yeah, there was challenging times.
Because obviously I live with my Nigerian mum, but I'm not really in touch with my Nigerian side as much because my family's grown up in the UK. So I grew up in London but I moved here. So, like, what would you say, like, if, for example, moving around from another country to the UK is like, or like from the UK to another country is like, because obviously it's different, it's very different. So how would you say that the differences and the similarities between the two areas?
And obviously the only person I can speak to is my experience. That goes back to your question around belonging. You're always in a space where I was in Nigeria for 8 years, and my dad told me I was going for a 2-week holiday, which I was excited to go because I'd never been on a plane. And then when I got there, I found out that I wasn't coming back to the UK, and they said that it was sending me home, right? But for me, probably like you, this is home. This is where I grew up. This is what I understand. So Nigeria was never home. It was my heritage. It's in my blood. It's in my history, but it wasn't home. So I spent 8 years not feeling at home. Never really feeling I belonged there, always feeling as an outsider.
What age were you, sorry?
Sorry?
What age were you?
I went when I was 16, came back when I was 24. I had a Nigerian passport and a British passport, and I tore up my Nigerian passport. And I was angry. I was so glad that I was back here in the UK and this is home. And I didn't ever want to get anywhere in Nigeria again. Didn't want to. But over the years, probably in the last 15 or so years, more so, I've embraced my Nigerian side. If I do a lot of public speaking now, I'll wear Nigerian clothes. Right? And I like that. I like walking into someone saying, this is now, I've embraced it. It's now part of me. Occasionally my friends in Nigeria say, what are you having? And I'll be cooking, I don't know, things like eba. Yeah. And I'll be cooking eba and they'll be like, you still eat Nigerian food? And I say, yeah, I like cooking. Yeah. So.
What tribe are you from?
What tribe am I from? My dad was Yoruba.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you Yoruba?
I think so. I just a bit mix and match. My nana, my mum, and my dad are from different places. So
how does Nigeria fit? What does Nigeria mean to you in terms of your identity?
So obviously, I grew up in London. And I grew up in a very white area as well. So I grew up in a small town near London. So everyone around me was always like, they would make jokes. The thing is, because it's normalised, it's just like it's normal. But growing up and my nana was born in Nigeria. She grew up in Nigeria. She moved here in around 20s, 30s, just after my mum was born. And obviously I've always had that side. Like I've always had like the food around me, but like I haven't really been in touch with it. Like I don't understand the environment of it. But like, I guess like you said, like it's the sense of belonging. But how do you feel like the clothing, for example, gives you more sense of like belonging, a sense of like feeling like you're more in the environment of somebody else?
I think it's not about the clothing. I think it's about identity, recognizing that. And I don't know whether it's because I've got older, right? But recognizing that there's more than the English side to my identity, and it's about embracing that I have a Nigerian name. Right? I mean, at one point I wanted to change my name to an English name. I'm called Gary Thomas or something silly like that. But no, I thought, no, I like, it's part of me. Even if I change the name, it's still part of me. So it's more about the identity rather than the belonging, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When did you realize that you were gay, out of interest?
The reason I'm thinking about that question, there was a part where when I was young, well, I say young, I could have been yesterday, but when I was probably in my early teens, I knew I was different, but I thought it was something that would pass. It was a phase I was going through, and when I find the right woman, things would sort themselves out, and I had that kind of vibe. When that didn't happen, I carried a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, tried to hide it, suppress it. in all sorts of ways. Alcohol, drugs, you name it, I tried it. So yeah, it took me 40 years to become comfortable with it. To say this is me.
In response to that, do you feel that you adjusting to Nigerian culture was a conflict to you dealing with your sexual feelings?
No, because there were gay people in Nigeria, I know.
Okay.
Gay people exist in other places.
I know.
Ignorant. Oh my gosh.
No, what it is because
They weren't out, but
in certain parts of like certain countries,
Yeah.
they so are oppressive, even more so in this country. And because I got the feeling you were kind of adjusting to part of your identity and belonging. Was there additional struggles? That's what I was kind of saying.
yeah, I mean, I've been used to suppressing my sexual orientation anyway,
Okay.
so it wasn't a big stretch to stretch.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah, it was something I always hid for a long, long time.
Okay. I do know that, but
It's like that French. There's a Nigerian writer, I forgot her name now. That she was doing an interview in France. And the French interviewer said to her, "So, do they have books in Nigeria?"
That's what I remember that interview.
I heard about that.
I was like, sorry?
it wasn't me. I wasn't the interviewer.
Are you sure?
Do we know this?
So that was a very good question, by the way.
So, do you think, were you always like comfortable around the police? Like, were you ever like growing up? Because obviously, with a lot of teens nowadays, they're like, "Oh, I don't trust the police." Did you always grow up trusting the police? Did that make you want to do it?
I had 3 experiences of the police growing up. Right? When I was in the village in Kent, right, in the village, you had the village Bobby lived in the village, and everybody knew the village Bobby, right? And he knew us all, and the kids, he knew everyone, and that was a very positive experience. It was in the days that if you did anything wrong, the police officer would take you home and make sure you got spanking with parents. That was the first experience. When I moved to London, I was about 8 or 9, and I was surprised that people didn't have that same vibe around the police. There was a lot of talks about a thing called racism, which I didn't understand, didn't know at that time. And then I was about 10 or 11, maybe a bit younger, and I was walking to school with this little Irish lad called Eugene. And we were walking along, and there was a police officer walking up ahead of us. And Eugene goes running up to this officer and says, "Hello, Mr. Policeman." And this police officer says something to him, then puts his hand in his pocket and gives him a coin. So I'm thinking, oh, the police are giving away money. So I go running up and I said, "Hello, Mr. Policeman." And he turned around and he said to me, "Fuck off, you little black bastard." Right? That's when my hatred of the police came in. Right? And I really did hate. I now had a reason to hate. All the conversations that would take place there now made sense to me because I had my experience. Then there was a third experience. I probably was about 13, 14, and we were going to the mosque because my father was a Muslim, and we were going to the mosque in Regent's Park for Eid. And we're walking down the road, and there's hundreds of people walking down the road. And we get to this junction, and in the middle of this junction is a black police officer. And he's standing in the middle of the road, and he puts his hand up like that, and all the cars stopped. And I just stood there, and I was just like in awe. Right? I watched this guy. I could have stayed there the whole day just watching this guy. I'd never seen a black police officer before. Right? And I think also what it was, given the context of the times, it was the first time I'd seen a black person in a position of power. And it just did something to my head. And I just stood there watching, and I said to my dad, "That's what I want to do. And my dad turned around, slapped me around the face and said, "Oh, my dead body, if you join them, they're going to kill you." But something about that moment planted a seed. Funny enough, the cop who that guy was is now a good friend of mine today.
Okay.
He's 80, 81. Yeah. But when I first came back, the question you were talking about, or I don't know whether you were going to ask me, but I was going to answer it anyway. In my head, I've got better questions for you. No, joke. I'll interview myself. Don't worry about it. No. Was why did I join? Because when I first came back, I didn't see the police as a career. Okay. But also, I got a job in a shopping centre in London as a security guard. And the police used to come in to pick up the shoplifters. And they had a police team that was attached to the shopping centre. So because we were security, we had to work in close proximity all the time. And they went from, first of all, I wouldn't even talk to them. But then we went from they're the police to that's Brian, that's Phil, that's Marion. And suddenly we started going for drinks together and we started to socialise. And I started to see them as people. But I also didn't know at the time, but I had a hatred of being black. I didn't want to be black. And I thought, and part of that, well, be honest about it, part of that was fed by Barclays Bank. That's random, isn't it?
Barclays?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't.
All
I'm
the
with
time.
Nationwide anyway. Like, what?
HSBC.
I'm Barclays. I'm concerned now.
What happened?
So,
out of interest.
when I first came back and I first got a first job, I wanted to open up a bank account. And I went into Barclays and said I would like to open up a bank account. And they said, we don't open up a bank account for people with Nigerian names. And I was like, no, I'm British. We don't care, you're Nigerian. We don't want anything to do with you. And I remember feeling so helpless and angry. And that fueled my hatred of being black. I didn't want to be. Now, as far as I was concerned, this is my home. I was English. And why are you treating me like this? And all this sort of stuff. So part of joining the police was so I could get that badge and that uniform to give me the power that I thought I didn't have as a black person. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Going back to when you said you had a Muslim father.
Yeah.
I also have a Muslim father. So
There's so much in common.
with like in the police and industry, like I feel like there's you hear a lot about like a lot of Muslims and like people who are black say, oh, I don't feel like I fit in here, because obviously with like in the past people have always said, oh, no one really thinks, oh, there were black police officers or there were Muslim police officers or there were gay police officers. Do you think like that's true, or that like it's just been said, or?
Sorry, what's...
So basically, when whole table, basically when like
Raise it down a little bit.
when so obviously you had a Muslim dad and you're gay and you're also growing up in the black community as well. Do you feel like, because obviously everyone always says, oh, these people don't belong here, or you don't really hear about Muslim police officers or black police officers in the past, do you feel like that's just something that's just said, or do you feel like there weren't really any black police officers or Muslim police officers that were really like a big role model, if you know what I mean?
I don't think there were... I mean, when I joined, I was surprised to find out how many black officers there were in the police. No, we weren't many. I mean, the station I was at, I was the only black officer at that station. But the force at that time had something like about almost 40,000 officers, and only 1,000 of them were from non-white backgrounds. and we were spread all over London. So it was almost a time where we almost knew each other, if not by name, but by face or stuff like that. Is this answering your question?
Yeah, because obviously, like, you don't really hear about Muslim police officers or black police officers. Whenever someone, like, obviously growing up, I never really heard, like, if someone goes, oh, Muslim police officer, you don't really think about it. Like, obviously, you just grow up thinking, as a child, you just think, oh, it's a police officer.
Yeah.
You don't think about it like that. But then realistically, when you are older, you kind of think about it, you're like, oh, there's a black police officer or that's a Muslim police officer. You don't really, like, it's not really something that's talked about.
From your generation as well, right? I would presume you were probably born in the early 2000s, yeah? So, at that time there were a lot more black and Asian police officers than there are now. Sorry, than when I joined, so to reverse that, right? So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah. Because obviously, with my family, both my parents moved to the UK, so they weren't born here. So that obviously my dad wasn't really comfortable with police officers. He didn't really think of there's Muslim police officers, because obviously I grew up in a white area, so every police officer around me was always white.
Right, yeah.
So when I saw a black police officer in like main London, I would be like you said, in awe of them, because like I've never seen one before. Where did these people come from?
Yeah.
Or like if my dad like was high-fiving a Muslim police officer, I'd be looking at them going, like, what's going on?
I had that when I first joined. I remember sort of like walking down the streets, and sometimes people would stop their car and get out their car, cross over the road to come and shake my hand, right?
In a congratulating way?
Yeah, yeah. Hold on, let me die before you bury me.
Right.
But then you had the other side of the coin, where you had black people that hated the fact that you were in that job. I mean, I called it the McDonald's effect. And the reason why I called it the McDonald's effect is in our local high road, there was a McDonald's. And that's where all the young black kids would hang out in McDonald's, right? And when I was a young cop, I had to walk past this McDonald's. And the first time, there's a 3-stage process, I call it. And the first time when I went out walking, and I walked past them, and as you walk past, you'd hear coconut, bounty, traitor. And those are the polite terms, right? And when I was young in service and not had that much confidence, every one of those felt like a knife in my back, right? And you'd walk along it, and there was nobody you could talk to about it. Because if you went to your friends, they would say, well, you shouldn't have joined. If you went back to talk to people at the station, they didn't get it. So a lot of the time, for that early part of my career, you had to hold that emotion inside. Right? And then you get to the point where you sort of think, well, maybe if I stop and I talk to them and explain, build up a rapport, that would change things. Right? So you try and stop and talk. Stage 2 is you stop and you try and talk, and they're not interested. They couldn't give a toss. They don't care. They're not even talking to you. They just walk off. And that hurts. And then you start to question yourself, right? So if my own people can't understand why I'm doing this, so if my own people couldn't understand why I was joining, what's the point in me doing this? That's stage 2. And that's where a lot of black and Asian officers will leave. Right? There isn't a time span. This could take months, it could take weeks, it could take a year, whatever. And then it got to the point where I said, actually, the only thing I need to know is that I know why I'm doing it. And I don't care why other people don't. But every time you got the insults, what would wipe it away would be when somebody comes up and says, well done. And, or, gives you a high five. I remember there used to be a record shop in the high street, Our Price, if anybody's old enough to remember Our Price. Yeah. And there were 2 black guys in there, Angus and Rob. And one day I love my music, right? And I walked in there wanted to get some CDs, and as I walked in, the 2 of them just stopped me. And hi guys, huh? I'm talking away to them. And then I went out. Years later, we became friends. And years later, they said they still today, they still remember when I walked in, and they can tell me the CD I bought on that day. And I said, why? Said, because you were the first black officer they had ever seen. Right? I remember I'd go to there used to be this black restaurant. What's her name? Mama. Oh, I forgot her name now. But she ran a Caribbean restaurant locally, right? And every time I passed it, she'd come eat some proper food. She'd give me, and I was sick once because I used to live in the police quarters behind the station. And she was sending curry goat and rice and peas and meat to eat and all this sort of stuff, making sure we got to take care of him. So there was a mixture of feelings. Does that make sense? Yeah.
But the way I would phrase the question I was going to ask is, this is going to sound really long-winded. My extended family and my dad's side of the family, they're Jamaican, right? And we, as like a household, as a family, my dad's side of the family and my mum's side of the family, they're white British. But with my dad's side of the family, and also I'd say me as well, there's like a very big distrust in the police. And I remember one time, one of my cousin's friends joined the force, and she stopped being friends with him, and he was like, I'm not one of the bad guys. And she said, it doesn't matter that you're black or white, you're blue now. And I feel like that kind of gets at the question I wanted to ask, like the internal reaction. How was that? Was it polarizing? Was it bad? Was it like you're achieving success, or did that sort of remove the fact that you were part of a community?
It's an interesting question, and it's not a question I've not been asked before. If that makes sense. And the way I look at it, there's two sides, right? There's the police as a profession. There's the police as a profession. Mm-hmm. You know? As a profession, I was proud of the profession. Right? There are people within that profession that taint its name. Right? But it's not everybody. And when people say the police are this, to me that's like saying all women are this, or all men are this, or all black people are this, or all, it's not all. There are people in that job that I worked with that were really, really good, right? Really good, and came to work and did their best. But at the same time, there were people in that job that I would not trust. I wouldn't even trust them to walk my dog. And unfortunately, those are the ones that taint it for everyone else, right? Because it makes the good cop's job a lot harder. I would get out of a car before I've even said anything. I'm judged. Before I've even said hello, the hostility is there. So, part of what I've now got to try and break through that hostility so I can get to a point where we can actually have a conversation. And I'm not saying that hostility is not justified. It is. Because I know, obviously I know some of the history. But it's when it's tarred everyone in that job. That's when it's all like, it's sad. Because I've seen that both sides, so to speak. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but
just say it.
No. Minstrel performances, like
black white minstrels.
Yeah. It and like that's sort of like the Jim Crow performance and stuff like that. It reminds me of. Did you ever get this sort of like from internally within the force, not internally within your family? Because I'm bad with vocabulary. Within the force, did you ever get this sort of he's one of the good ones when it came to your race? Sort of like. Like that sort of like pub guy mentality. He's one of the good ones. I like a curry sometimes, or something. Something. Like that.
But I've got that in all sorts of environments.
Mm-hmm. It's tokenization.
Yeah, I've got that in all sorts of places, not just in the police. Which is sad.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like, for example, when you went out with other police officers, let's say they were all white police officers, and you were the only black one there, that you felt like everyone else around you was watching you and judging you?
In the early parts of my career, yes. Yeah. But once I got to that place where I got comfortable wearing uniform, I loved it. A lot of the time I'd be pushing to the front.
Yeah.
Diva.
I'm more forward than all of you.
Look at me on the knee. But no, yeah, it was. Once I got comfortable with it, I've never been shy of being at the forefront. My most comfortable place is standing in front of an audience, standing on a stage, talking to thousands of people. For example, when you talk about the BAFTAs, you go into the Albert Hall, right? And the person I was with, who we were both receiving, she was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be no." I said, "Don't worry about it. I love it. Just you with me, girlfriend." And I just walk out and I'm just like, I feel happy. So when I was in the police, I did a lot of that. I just stood up in front. I mean, one of my uncles in Nigeria was a magician, a big magician, and he did magical shows, but they were in stadiums. So you're talking about 15, 20,000 people. And I used to walk on the stage and say, "Are you ready for some magic?" And I loved it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not shy about that. But when I used to speak to young black officers coming into the job, and I would say it's not only black officers, to anyone, I'd say, if you're coming in, the first thing you've got to be comfortable with is who you are. Because if you're not, the police will tell you who you are. For example, when I joined, I knew nothing about gypsies, gypsy travelers or that community. By the time I finished 2 years in the police, I hated that community. Because that was the culture that we were in. And if you look at it, not to justify it, right? But the police are only, 90% police work is dealing with rubbish. So if the only thing you're used to dealing with is negativity all the time, it gives you a very tainted view of the world. And it's dangerous to sort of like, if you're not aware, you end up taking on that negativity. You can't trust anybody but us. Everyone's a liar, everyone's a crook, everyone's a potential this. And that's the sad part of the job.
Do you think leaving the police has changed you in a way? So obviously with being in the police, you said you eventually felt comfortable, but you feel like when you've left, you feel like a piece of you's gone, or you've fallen back a bit?
I don't feel like falling back. When I left the police, I could have stayed another 5-10 years. Okay? But I got to that point where I felt, I've had enough. I want to do something different now. Like I said, when I joined, it was somewhere to hide. By the time it came to the end of my career, I didn't feel like I didn't need to hide anymore. So it was almost like I was like a butterfly. In the police, I was in my cocoon. And then I broke out of that cocoon and I'm like, whoa, okay, I don't need that stuff anymore. I don't need it. It's not serving the purpose that I need. And I ended up towards the last couple of years, I was arguing with everybody in the police. All my bosses, I was arguing with them all the time. I used to go to work in Nigerian clothes and I remember sitting in the meeting, and my colleague Natalie, she turns around, she whispers me, "Gee, they know you're black, you don't have to prove it." I said, "No, I know I'm black, but I want them to know that I know I'm black."
I find it quite interesting. Actually, recently today, I was reading some Judith Butler. I'm so educated. About and she was talking about lesbianism being this sort of I'm lesbian, by the way. There being this sort of
I'm coming out.
I want the world to know.
Oh, you got a voice girl, girlfriend.
Yeah, I got a 7 in my music performance. That was fun.
Let's clap.
Anyway.
I got after.
I got DFE.
I did not want to do that
I got GCSE. Yes, okay.
Anyway, but what I was getting at is Judith Butler. I don't know if it was Judith Butler. Actually, I have a screenshot. This is not Judith Butler. This is someone surrounding Judith Butler. I took a screenshot of this. But
Look at her being
it was
educated.
something like, if I can find it, wait. Nearly.
Have you read Audre Lorde?
No. This is Monique Whitting. One is not born a woman. Lesbianism is the only concept I know which is beyond the categories of sex, woman and man, because the designated subject, lesbian, is not a woman, either economically, politically, or ideologically. For what makes a woman is a specific social relation to a man, a relation that we have previously called servitude, a relation which implies personal and physical obligation as well as economic obligation, forced residence, domestic conjugal duties, unlimited production of children, etc. A relation which lesbians escape by reusing to become or stay or to stay heterosexual. I got there in the end. Do you think that being gay kind of felt like an escape from like that sort of average machismo of like being male in sort of that gender role that you played, or did you not view it like that?
No, I don't view it like that. I don't. You see, because to me, what I hear in that statement is choose. It's almost like I'm choosing to be gay as opposed to being this, and I didn't choose to be gay. Gay is who I am. I just took a while to understand that. If that makes sense. Yeah. So it's not something I became, it's something I was. And it's almost as well, there's something in there saying, when I hear that statement, there's something about almost categorizing that the gay, whether it's the male or the lesbian or straight or gay guy, there's an experience that they all should have. And it's not like that. We all have different experiences around that. We all, not everybody goes through this journey. There's some people that are just comfortable right from day one. And it's not as simple as that. I always struggle when people put it into a specific category in a specific box, because I think that's the problem. Putting people in boxes, giving people labels. I think that's the big, because it stops us seeing the human.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think labeling comes a lot in perspective. Do you think labeling affected you personally, especially within the force? Because like obviously you get either like an F slur or like a little like I don't know like a fairy. That sounds like a bit of a weird insult.
Do you know something I never experienced? I never experienced any homophobia in the police.
Really?
Yeah. Right? I experienced more homophobia from my family and from so-called friends. But I always think when I came out, when I was in the police, it was incredible. It was my safe space coming out. Never experienced homophobia. I experienced racism, but I never experienced the whole... And I'm not saying that other gay officers haven't.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
But for me personally, and my interpretation or my understand, the way I make sense of that is my attitude wasn't, I'm gay, you got a problem with it. My attitude is, I'm gay, I'm not, it's not your business. So if somebody comes to me and says, well, why are you gay? And I said, why do I have to explain to you?
Do you think that being gay and being in the police ever affected your dating life in a way that like people would be like, oh, he's one of them, or I don't want to date him because of your story or anything like that?
I don't look at it like that. I really don't give a damn what people think. Yeah, what people think about my color or my sexuality or I don't care. It's not yours. I live with me. You have as much. There's a phrase I like, is that you have as much impact on me as I allow you to have. And that's to me, that's the empowerment part, is if you truly own your identity, then it doesn't matter what people say about you. That's where you hold your head up high. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think. It's not, the mistake you make is that you think I need your permission to be me. I don't.
With regards to, I suppose, your the intersectional conversation around colour and sexuality, what would you say to a young person who was struggling with either or both?
It's very simple, but I say, don't separate yourself. You are not you've got both. You are you. You're unique in having all those things. Everybody is unique, and that's what we all have in common: our uniqueness, right? I think when people say race and gender and sexual orientation and all these intersectional things, I can understand it if you want to do categories, but actually, I'm just me. Just be you. Just be you. Just be you, and embrace your uniqueness. Right? Because all of those things make you who you are. And there will never, in the whole history of the world that has ever been, and the whole history of the world that will ever come, there will never be another you. So just embrace everything about you. The person you need to be proud of is the person that looks at you in the mirror. If that person is not proud of you, that's when you got problems.
Weirdly inspiring for a Tuesday evening. Weirdly inspiring for a Tuesday evening. What I was going to ask is, there's a belief in like the LGBTQ community. First of all, do you associate with that community out of interest? Like,
I don't think there's a community.
Not like okay.
There's communities.
Communities, yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah? Because, I could go to an LGBT group here in Bedford, and it'd be completely different to the one I'll go to in London. So there is, to have this thing that there's a universal voice, not yet in the Muslim community, right? The way LGBT is spoken about there is completely different to the white community. I have been to conferences, LGBT conferences, as a guest speaker, and I'm the only black person in the room. Right? And I sit there and I say, where's the people of colour? Yeah? And some people think that LGBT is only white. There are people that think that. Right? And then there are people in the black community who think they're marginalised and think that, we are so... so there isn't a community. That's what
Yeah.
So I struggle when if people say black community or the LGBT community or the Muslim community, I'm like, which community? They don't exist. Right? There are people that have those shared characteristics. But it doesn't mean we all... Go on.
I was wondering, because you've been telling us your story and everything like that, and one thing that stood out to me is that your life you have spent in so many separate communities, with regards to your childhood, being fostered, and then going back to Nigeria, and then being Nigerian here, having to adjust, and then to the police force, and then coming out LGBTQ plus. So maybe that's why you don't see, because your life has been jumping from one community to another, where some people, they don't jump.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
And when I speak, I'm not speaking for everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from my experience and the way and that is because my a very good friend of mine, he describes me as mercurial.
Okay.
Right? And what mercurial means is that I can float into all different communities because of that experience. And I do recognize that. And what I recognize more than anything else, and when I think about this about myself, it makes me emotional, right? But it makes me realize how much of a survivor I am. To be able to do things like this, and to be able to win BAFTAs.
Damn it! Now I've got to win a BAFTA.
You've got time.
Yeah.
So I'll win the Brit Awards instead.
But you know, in order to do, when I look back and I look at all those things that I've done and achieved, I'm thinking, I've had a shitty life, but I've made a nice meal out of it. And that's why I laugh and joke and I'm happy, and that energy you pick up now. Because I'm sitting there, I can look at all that stuff and carry it around as a burden and think, woe is me. Or I can look at it and say, look, hey, I'm a survivor. I celebrate me. And you know, there's a story, I love this story, of American Indian goes to the witch doctor in the village and says, how do I know I'm alive? And the witch doctor says, inside you have 2 dogs. Right? One dog is angry, bitter, twisted, lost, all this sort of stuff. The other dog is joyful, strong, happy, positive, and confident. And then he goes quiet. And the Indian looks at him and goes, so how do I know which dog controls me? Because it depends on which one you feed.
Very true. Very true. Very, very true. Thank you for that. I would like, maybe, because we've kind of come to the end, is there anything we haven't covered from either the interviewee or the interviewer?
I have a question.
Okay.
But I'll let you finish this.
I don't have anything to say, actually. I think you've kind of hit the mark of what I wanted to discuss. Yeah.
So, okay. Then my question to you is, what's your takeaways?
Good question.
I'm the facilitator. So what I've taken away, what you said about the different communities, there isn't a community. I truly believe that did leave an imprint on me, because it is very true. And you've gone through so many different communities, and some have rejected you, some have accepted you, some you've had to negotiate strategically, and some you had to accept. This is all you're going to get. So it's about how you respond to it. Yeah. So I think that's also quite good as well. I like the comment about the dog as well, about feeding. Are you going to feed the good dog, the bad dog? You make a choice. You're choosing your destiny. That's what I've taken away from that. I also like the fact that you've had a lot of adversity, and the person that sits in front of me comes across as being really strong, and you come across as being really positive. And I think sometimes that's what you need to see, that trauma and adversity can also lead to strength and power and knowledge. So that's what I've taken. So I've spoken for ages. Yeah. So it's giving you time to think.
I kind of take away, like, just like she said, kind of take away a lot of as well. Like, obviously you said that you're not to listen to
music, so
not to listen to what everyone else says, because obviously everyone else around me has always impacted me and my thoughts. I'm like, oh, this person said this about me and that person said that about me. Basically, you just didn't care. And I feel like that's quite inspirational as well, that if you don't think about what everyone else says, it's like, it's irrelevant. It's your life, not theirs, which obviously was quite inspirational, and also made me think, if I kept thinking about it, would I be different? You know what I mean? But yeah, I feel like a lot of what you said is quite, a young person, is quite, like, you got a lot to think about.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to learn that, though. So if I've given you something that can put you ahead of the curve, it's going to be a great life for you.
Hopefully.
I think my takeaway is, and I'm going to word this kind of badly, but I think that with everything that you said and how long it took you to figure out who you are, I'm going to quote this guy named John Lee Anderson who wrote a...
You like reading, don't you?
Yes, who I love reading. I'm reading Frankenstein for the first time this year, which John Lee Anderson is the sole journalist of Che Guevara, this guy over here. And to quote him, I would say...
I don't know who you are. I'm joking.
Oh, okay, good. Oh my gosh. To quote John Lee Anderson, he called Che Guevara the most complete man. And I think you have given me, and also the other young people that are going to listen to this, the tools to be complete. And I applaud you for that. I think that's
Can I say something around that? There's something very interesting around that, right? And you've said it, and you've kind of alluded to it. It's my comfort doesn't come from knowing myself. My comfort comes from knowing that I don't know myself.
I think that's quite compelling.
Huh?
Yeah, I think that's quite compelling. I think, like,
when I thought I
acceptance-
knew myself, I was knocked off balance all the time. The moment I stopped saying, "This is who I am," became more powerful, because something could happen in the next 5 minutes, the next hour, the next day, that would totally flip everything you think you know about yourself. And I like those moments. I look for those moments, because that's what makes life interesting. And that's what makes you comfortable. So when you get somewhere, you don't feel like you're being knocked off balance. You feel like you're growing.
Yeah. Also, this one does not need to be on the podcast, but I'm a bug nerd, and you said butterflies go in cocoons. They don't. Cocooning's the verb. It's called a chrysalis. So the thing they go inside is a chrysalis, and it's called cocooning.
So all I've said, that's what you're going to correct me on.
That's the only. That's the only.
You've been
That's
sitting
my
there, I haven't heard a
criticism.
word you said, because I've been working that out. I'm waiting to get to that point.
I was like, it was in the back of my head. I was like, ooh.
Well, at this point, I'm going to say thank you very much for giving us your time and sharing your amazing story. I could, even though you've told the story with a smile, I can imagine you've gone through dozens of emotions to create the stories that you've told us. And I value and appreciate the fact you're comfortable enough to share your journey and how you got here with us. I feel privileged. So just say thank you, people.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
you.
Because it was... Thank you.
We really appreciate
It was amazing. It's very much
I almost
sitting on the
need you there.
floor. Sitting on the floor at assembly. Thank you, Sam. It's a very nice talk.
This is Next Generation Podcast, a sporting aid project